And that brings us to our discussion agenda, item number 15, which is the proposed general fund budget for 2016, 2017, shown in Exhibit E. Mr. Richardson, I know you're going to lead us through that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to go through this PowerPoint to give you the highlights of what we're looking at, and then I'll get into some detail with the booklet that I provided to you in your board packets. Here's my usual disclaimer. Nothing's changed since we discussed this at our last board meeting on what some of the parameters of the budget were going to be. Right now, all we have is the House version of the budget. Although I understand Senate Finance has finished their version of the budget this week or this past week, but we have not seen any of the numbers come out of it, except for one change, which I'll highlight when we get to that point. I gave you a different quote this time. I did not quote the Rolling Stones. Thought something would be a little more appropriate, having to do with education. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Here's the budget considerations for this year. Our expenditures are expected, or as it stands, I guess I need to back up a little bit, let you know that this budget is, number one, still a work in progress. There's some as time goes through, as we go through time, some of these numbers will be updated on the expenditure side and on the revenue side as we get better information from the state. As far as our calendar goes, we're not, our plan is not to discuss the budget at our next board meeting, but wait till the last board meeting in May. And we're hoping we'll have good numbers from the Senate, which will get us in a much better position to get this budget a little bit more in balance. But right now, as it stands, we're looking at our contracted services going up a little better than $1.5 million, and mainly or primarily due to our increased costs for our school resource officers, $550,000. We're looking at our what our substitutes and absenteeism are costing us right now, so we felt like we needed to increase that budget to the tune of about $446,000. And we tried to do this last year in our budget. It is appropriate that we have many license and maintenance agreements for our technology that have been paid out of capital funds that we're trying to get back into the general fund where they should be. We have added an additional social worker to this budget. Currently, I believe we have 9 social workers in the district, and we felt the need for at least one more, which is what you see there. We've increased our supplies, primarily school supplies. Number one, because we've eliminated select fees, and those are highlighted. What we did was gave you the fee schedules from prior years in your green booklet and the fee schedule piece, and you can go through. We've marked the ones that we are proposing to eliminate through this process. And that's to the tune of about $913,000. And then because of some school and grade level changes from students, there's an additional $83,366 in there for school supplies as well. We're also proposing as part of this budget a $500 bonus for all district employees. That is almost equivalent to a 1% cost of living for employees. However, there would be no sustainability there. We would not have to do this year after year. So this would be a one-time thing for our employees to hopefully help with morale and show them that they're appreciated. The reduction you see there is we typically have to transfer money into food service to pay for the fringe benefits costs, and we've missed it about $100,000 last year, so we've just reduced that budget. And then, of course, the net of all these other changes, this is the big one, is our 2% cost of living that's in here for every employee. Step increase for all of your eligible employees and any credential changes we have, and the fringe benefits costs that go along with those that are increasing. We know that retirement and health and dental are going up as well, so that equates to a little better than $4 million, which all that ties back to the $8.1 million increase in our general fund budget.
Mr. Grant?
I think Ms. Hutchison has a question. Ms. Hutchison?
On that previous slide, when you have the cost of living and then state step and credential, is that the required increase? Is the cost of living, is that the required from the state, or is that?
The state requires 2% cost of living for teachers. We've passed that along to all our employees in this budget. The step increase is for teachers and any eligible employees on other salary schedules in the district that would get an experience increase.
Thank you.
Mr. Kent, I had one on that too before we go.
Ms. Hammond?
I know you said it, but I was concentrating somewhere else. The transfer to food service, what was that?
The general fund is required to pay a portion of their fringe benefits cost.
Oh, okay, so it's actually okay.
So I'm still cautiously optimistic, although maybe not quite as optimistic as I was at the last board meeting. I do think that our new system is helping us gain control of our costs and identify where we can make some or improve some efficiencies and reduce some costs. Like I said, some of the things that we've been doing this past year, we're starting to realize some savings from those. The Office of Human Resources and the Office of Instruction, they're continuing to analyze all of our staffing requirements and trying to make it more efficient and consistent across the district. State funding is projected to be better than it has been in recent years. And at the time of this, there were no state funding shifts projected for 2017. However, I understand that the Senate Finance Committee has decided to take $10 million out of the fringe benefits allocation to school districts to use to pay for school buses. So that's not necessarily true based on what I've seen or have heard. We continue to look at any kind of ways, explore ways to reduce cost, and I will say that our schools have been very prudent in holding the line with their discretionary spending this year. Oops, sorry. This is how our revenue breaks down as it stands currently. Current taxes, all of our local revenue is totaling about $64.6 million, which is about 37% of our budget. The state revenue, which comprises about 60% of our budget, is at $103,944,620. I'll go back one. That line, the second line, state fringe benefits, was projected to be $20.7 million next year. I would suggest to you that will probably be reduced based on the action of Senate Finance Committee, taking the $10 million out of that line statewide. I don't know how much that'll mean to this district, but it will be a reduction. For a total expected revenue as of today of $173.1 million. And this just graphically breaks that down for you on a percentage basis. And as you can see here, state comprises about 60% of our budget, and local is about 37%. Here's how our expenditures break down. Salaries currently are totaling $111,018,000, or almost 64% of our budget. Fringe benefits, $41.2 million, or about 24% of our budget. And you'll notice that we've typically been in the 89 to 90% salaries and fringe, but because of what we're doing with supplies and materials and bringing some of those things out of capital to pay for license agreements and maintenance agreements on software across the district, that percentage has shrunk a little bit. Our contracted services are projected to be at 12.1 million, supplies and materials 9.2 million. Other objects, 444,000, and then all of our transfers of $431,745, leaving total expenditures at 174,572,287. This just breaks it down graphically for you to see how everything's distributed. So here's a recap. Projected revenue is currently projected to be approximately $1.4 million short of what we're projecting our expenditures to be. This is the allowable millage increase that's set forth in statute. As you can see, our consumer price index for this year is very low at 0.1% or 0.12%. Our population growth has been at 1.42, so we are able to go up on millage 1.5%, which equates to 3.9 mills in this district. And currently, we're estimating the value of a mill to be roughly $243,000. So 3.9 mills would bring us right at the neighborhood between $947,000 and $950,000. Which, as you can see, would not completely balance our budget at this time. Spoke about this earlier, but this is our proposed calendar. As you can see, we don't have another discussion of the budget until May the 23rd meeting. So hopefully we will have better numbers for you at that time. And we'll continue to work on this and hone this budget. I'll be glad to try to address any questions that you may have with what I just went over.
Ms. Hutchison.
Mr. Gann, I'd like to request that all the board members get a copy of this PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And then for future budget discussions, it would be very helpful for the board members to have a hard copy of the PowerPoint so that as we're talking about it, Mr. Richardson is going through the numbers, we'll have them in front and can make our notes.
Ms. Richardson, that's probably not a problem, is it, to get the?
Not a problem. Matter of fact, I actually have copies for you tonight, and I failed to give them out.
Oh, gosh.
I was thinking of you.
I'm glad you can read my mind. We would love to have those. Thank you.
Ms. Hammond.
Mine's just really a general question. I know you keep emphasizing that it is a work in progress, and but this begins our discussion. I think sometimes as I look at this, and it's really not anything we can do about it, but I do like maybe we could get, as you do get any updates from the, final figures from the state, from our legislators, it's like, as I look at this and then I'm thinking it's going to change, I mean, in some ways that's frustrating to me that we begin it before we have hard facts. And yet I understand why, because we've got to start looking at it and so the public can hear us, and then we have the several readings. But I think sometimes as I've looked at these numbers, and I've made a lot of notes, and thank you, Ms. Hutchinson, I definitely wanted a copy, so he had it and we got it. But I think, I know that you don't have an answer about why it's a work in progress, but I guess we can't wait till we have these hard figures because of what you have to get done to get your new fiscal year started with you. But it is frustrating as a board member sometimes that it's all a work in progress. So I don't know which of these figures are going to change and, where we might need to bring back, back to the board or to Dr. Hefner things to look at as far as the budget. So
Well,
it's frustrating.
I
and I'm
will
sure
tell
it
you
is
that,
to you.
that things are subject to change as we go through this because it's a fluid process as far as right now trying to get a handle on revenues, obviously. And expenditure-wise, we try to keep it as up-to-date as possible. So one of the things that helps us as we go through this process is as we have teachers retire or employees leaving the district,
Yeah, that could change
that
it.
that can change our salary numbers, hopefully better, make them better.
Right. And Mr. Gant, and this was my only other question, the I think I got this right, 1.5 million contracted services, it had gone up by that. Now, that's things like give me an example of, that was the one, I just wrote my
Well,
notes.
a couple of big ones are
I wanna know what went
the
up,
school
so-
resource officers.
Yeah, was there anything else? So I made a note of that one, but that didn't do the whole amount.
No, it did not. Resource officer costs are going up to the tune of about $550,000. There was about $650,000 worth of technology, maintenance agreements, license agreements, those kind of things that have been paid out of capital the past few years, which realistically should be part of the general fund, which allows us to put more money into the technology itself. That would free up about
So a lot of
$650,000 there. And then, of course, just our substitute cost seem to be, we've missed the budget by about $446,000.
Well, when you say substitute costs, have we seen a savings since we went to Kelly?
No, we have not, but now remember, we did not say. we
It'd be
would see it.
immediate, I remember that.
We were looking at cost avoidance, particularly with things like the Affordable Health Care Act, making sure that we didn't drive up our cost. But no, two things have happened. One is the one thing that I think has driven up the cost is our fill rates are much higher. As I look back over the previous years, previous months, our fill rate previously was in many cases around 84%. For example, in February of last year, it was a fill rate of 84%. And with Kelly, the fill rate is 95%. So they're getting more people in, and at the same time, our absences have soared. And we've talked about that with our faculty, asking why. We're still analyzing that. It seems to be a big year for pregnancies. A lot of people out for extended time with FMLA, which certainly drives up the need for substitutes. And our teachers, said that things are very stressful, and there have been more absences just due to the fact that it's been it's a very stressful time with the unknowns with regard to testing and teacher evaluation. So two things have happened. Our number of absences have increased, and our fill rate has gone up. And so that's something we'll need to study more. We talked about it a little bit today as an executive staff. Was it a deterrent for teachers from missing school when their friends had to give up their planning periods to cover their class? Might have been. And now that there's a substitute teacher in the room, it may be easier for people to be out. But we'll have to take a look at a breakdown of that. But it is a fact. Our absences have gone
Way up.
much
That one
higher.
is.
They were high. They have gone higher. And our fill rates have been higher with Kelly services. So.
That was my question about the contracted services.
Ms. Taltwanger.
Yes, Ms. Richardson, on the same page here, you have elimination of select school fees. That's a positive figure, correct?
I think the parents of this district would think so.
Yeah.
So that's the school fees are as a result of, how do you determine which school fees to eliminate? How do you come up with that?
That's a very good question. If you'll look in the green booklet, under the, excuse me, under the fee schedules, and someone smarter than me and more knowledgeable than me on school fees have gone through and picked out those fees that were for our core instruction to eliminate. There's still some fees in here that'll be still be in place, but we've looked at all of our elementary school fees that we charge, the $25 per pupil. We've done the same with our intermediate. We've eliminated certain core class fees. In our middle schools, the same thing, and you can see which ones are proposed to change as you go through here. We've tried to highlight each one. The same, with middle school, intermediate school, and then obviously high school fees, which are quite extensive. We've gone through and hopefully identified every class fee for the core curriculum to eliminate. That equated to about, in the grades 6 through 12, equates to about $50 per pupil that was collected.
And
We've tried
if
to
I-
replace.
If I just may clarify, then we're proposing that the district backfill to the schools for those funds. We would not charge the parents, but we would provide that funding to the schools. And it's basically for the core classes, your basic registration fee for elementary, and for basically your core, what I would call your core courses. There may be a more current term than that, Dr. Milton, but English, language arts, math, science, social studies, physical education, anything that's required for graduation, we don't charge, like many of our neighbors do not charge. And I want to go back, I think it was to 2013, one of our board members asked me as a superintendent what I thought, we needed to do in order for District 5 to maintain its competitive position. And at that time, I named three things. I said I thought we needed to add to our SROs. At that time, we did not have them in elementary schools, and we did. That year, we added them. I believe that was the right thing to do, and I still support that. And secondly, I said I thought we needed to expand our early childhood education efforts, and we did. We added, how many? 9 classes that year. I was thinking it was even more than that, but we added at least 9 that year. And the third thing I said was that I would like to see us be in a position where we did not pass on so many fees to our parents. And we haven't been able to do that, but I believe I have a hard time, just quite frankly, defending to people why we're charging them a basic fee for taking English, language arts, math, science. I don't have a trouble for an elective or something that's an additional program, but I think that would be a real, something that would be very appropriate for our parents.
Ms. Hutchison.
I'm on the revenue page in our green book. And Mr. Richardson, can you explain, I see where we're losing about almost $500,000 in local revenue, a combination of local revenue and state revenue. And if you said this earlier, I missed it. Can you tell us why we're losing that revenue?
Well, overall, are you talking about the specific items that are marked in red?
Yes.
Well, I won't say that we're losing those. We've just missed those in the past year. Like, for instance, the other local revenue, we had budgeted at $430,000. It's pretty evident that we're not going to meet that this year, so we just reduced that budget to hopefully be a little bit more accurate than we have been. And retiree insurance, I think, which is 3181, which is down under the revenue from state sources. That is the projection that has been provided to us from the Department of Education. Excuse me. The two fringe benefits, 3180 and 3181, are closely tied to each other, and sometimes the estimates are a little off between the two. The 3181 is based on actual salaries that are paid by the district, and that's where they come up with this amount. And apparently, the projection for next year is going to be lower, so we just lowered that to reflect what the State Department has given us. And then the other state revenue, 3990. We haven't gotten any this year. We budgeted 245 last year, so we thought that we would probably just try to make it a little more accurate as well.
Thank you.
If you like, there's some things I can highlight on the expenditure side that may help you. I'm sure you got plenty of questions, but I'll try to walk through a couple of things that I'm sure that if you've looked at it may draw your attention a little bit. On page 1, under the high school programs, at the bottom of the page, you'll see a reduction on line 21 of $1.5 million roughly. That is our substitute salaries where we've had them budgeted in the past. It probably should never have been budgeted in high school, so we have moved it, and I'll show you later where we've moved it to. And if there's anything in between pages that you've got a question about, I'll be glad to go back and try to address it. But there were several that I knew would probably have questions. If you'll go to page 6, line number 141. This is where we have moved the substitute salary budget to and increased it by $446,000 to have the budget at $2 million for next year.
Mr. Gant,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question on page 5.
Okay.
I see that there's a change, a negative change for the gifted and talented, and where we're decreasing that, can you, by $322,000, can you talk to us about that?
Sure. A lot of these where you see specific increases or decreases in salaries may be because a teacher was either, number one, last year classified as a gifted and talented teacher where he or she may not have been, so we've moved them to the right place, or, excuse me, or the opposite could be true too. But it's just probably just a reclassification. We have not reduced teachers. It's probably where they've just been reclassified throughout the budget.
So, well, that's a lot of reclassification, 322,000. So you're telling us that there's not a decrease in what we are currently offering for gifted and talented?
No, no ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
That would equate to about 3 teachers there. That $225,000 approximately.
For 2 teachers.
On page 7,
Services that I'm aware of. We haven't reduced any.
I know, but
on page 7, there's parenting family literacy lines 175 and 176. You'll see we haven't had a budget there in the past. We do now. Those employees are partially funded, I think, with First Steps, and the remainder is funded through general fund. Excuse me, I am unsure where we've paid those salaries in the past, but we've made sure that we've got them in the correct place now, and that's why they're showing up in the general fund.
I have a question. Ms. Gaster?
And just on line 181, that...
Mr. Richardson,
excuse
you have
me.
a question, Ms. Hutchinson?
on page 6, there, are we doing away with our summer school for elementary and high school, or did those move to a separate category?
No, we're not doing away with them. Good catch, and I meant to draw that to your attention. We completely left it out, but what should happen here, and this will be reflected in our next budget in May, but the revenue is not reflected here either, so it should, in theory, offset the expenditures. Not sure it's going to be the case, but we haven't reflected revenues or expenditures for summer school, and that was just an oversight coming into this meeting.
So where we have negative numbers, next time you'll have actual numbers for what we're budgeting for the elementary and
Yes,
high
ma'am.
school summer school?
Yes, we will.
Okay.
And there will be some revenue to offset that increase as well,
Okay, thanks.
because those are tuition-based.
Ms. Hammond?
Does it matter where my question is? Do I have to be alone? I have a question in the salary supplement schedules where you get over to the like stipends for band director, acting. It doesn't have a page number to tell everybody, but it's under duty, and it's got a large section blacked out, which is department heads. In lieu of saving money or doing the budget, how did that change? Is they just not getting any, you know, how it has, I guess, steps there? They just have the one, there's only a cost under the one. And I heard from some teachers, and I could be wrong, but are we cutting out department heads? I know they, at one time, it may be your question, they would have a planning period that was for that, you know, even though that you get a planning period, but they did a lot of work when you're department head. So is that a place they're not gonna?
May I address that one? We did a study of all of the schedules across the Midlands, the people with whom we compete, and we found that, I guess, two significant points. One's that our supplements for department chairs had been less than maybe some other districts, but
They got the
we did not require them to teach as much as any of our neighbors did. So I think you'll see it reflected. I know the pages don't show, but our teachers will teach a full load next year, but their supplements will increase. And I can't give you
You
the
see how
page
that
number.
is? I can't give you a page, but it just has that, whereas all the others
Here,
have.
and then if you flip over two other pages,
Okay, yeah, it's the same
it
thing.
will show.
It's all
that
departments.
For the departments where there are end of course tests, they will get. You see that they will get a supplement of $5,000.
Gotcha.
And where there's not an
It's-
end of course test, they'll
$2,500.
get lesser amounts of money. But in the aggregate, it is a savings to the
Yeah,
district.
that's what I want to know.
And,
So-
depending on how you figure the average salary of a teacher, it yields a significant savings per individual.
And let me ask you, while we're on these, just for interest, this is asked to me even by people that don't work in our district that might want to come and work in our district. How do we determine the stipends? Let's say if you're the JV cheerleader coach, or you're the basketball middle school coach, you know, is it a set? I mean, I'd really like to know that.
Well,
how we
I think
determine
it goes back to the days that a lady named Jan Hammond was the cheerleading coach at
I
Ernest
think
High
it was,
School.
yes. We
You
made
prob-
all
and
of
you're
maybe
probably due-
$500.
You're probably due some back pay, I don't know, but,
No, but how do we determine it? Because I get that asked all the time.
well,
Who picks
I am not going to be able to answer that question because I inherited this system just like Mr. Richardson did, and I don't know how it came to be.
So really, it has nothing to do, that's my point, it has nothing to do with somebody's number of times, number of years they've coached. You know what I'm saying? Because, I mean, we've had,
Well, I think we have a scale that rewards them for both how much past experience they have. And maybe Dr. Jakes could shed some light on that, because we have looked at the whole supplements issue, and there are probably several things there we will want to continue to look at. One of the
Yes,
big
that's what I-
pieces was to try to bring, I guess, to make our salary schedule for department chairs look more like that
Other districts.
of other districts, and the responsibilities look like that. But Dr. Jakes, do you have anything you want to add on the steps for the sports?
Sure. So for athletics, they're based on years of experience, years of coaching experience, and we have a specific form that's utilized to assess that experience. There's an integrity statement that's been included in that to ensure that we're being accurate. So someone who has coached for a number of years is going to receive a more significant supplement than someone who's just beginning, and that's part of the process we have when we sign the coaching agreements and bring on people to coach those areas.
so these steps on here, like, I'll pick one like the yearbooks, or the academic team coach, because that's important, okay? But it'll start and it goes up, you know, under the first one, $598, and then the second, I guess that second year, because it's a step. Is that what that means?
Correct.
And so as they've done it longer, their stipend goes up a little bit.
Correct. So that's true for specific organizations or things like yearbook. Those types of things are based on how long you have done that particular thing. If you've been a Beta Club sponsor for 6 years, that's going to be noted. And with athletics, it's a little different because you're looking at, you may have a coach come in who's coached a particular area. We validate that experience and look at it very carefully. And that's often a recruiting mechanism if you've got someone with experience to come in. But it also comes into play when we're looking at those clubs and activities.
So if they're a coach, if if they lose a lot of games, we don't take their salary down or anything.
That doesn't factor in.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to know why we had a blackout on the department heads. Now I know.
There's a couple of other items I'll draw your attention to, just to kind of hopefully answer some questions before you ask them. On page 8, you'll see a reduction in our guidance services on page line 195 through 199. That's where we're getting a little bit of additional career specialist funding that we have moved the teacher salary or guidance salaries to. And right below that would be our nursing funds. That's allowed us to get nursing salary out of our general fund as well. We have not reduced the number of school nurses. And on page 9, lines number 219 and 220, this is where we've reclassified some of our assistant principals in the district out of function 221 to function 233, which is school administration, which you'll see on the following page. And that would be on line number 257 and 258, where you can see the increases in the principal salaries and the addition of the assistant principal salaries, part of the assistant principal salaries. On page 12, line number 305, let's start at the top. On line 293, you'll see food service salaries that you've never seen in the general fund before. What that is the bonuses for the food service employees that is showing up here, part of the $1.3 million. And just so you know, the $500 would be prorated based on your FTE. So if you're not full-time, obviously, you would not get the full $500. It would be prorated based on the amount of time you work. On line 305, the $550,000 increase is our school resource officer expected increase in cost. Below that is lines 310 through 314. That is a new function that the State Department has required us to use regarding all salaries related to direct reports to the superintendent. So all these folks sitting here, our salaries would be now reflected there rather than, for instance, mine would be in function 252 fiscal services. It's no longer there. It's now in function 261.
Why did they do that?
Don't know the reasoning behind it, but I think it's just to see how the district's structured in upper management. But that's a requirement that actually is required this year. We haven't made that adjustment. So when we adjust that, we will have a budget showing here, but we'll bring that to you once that's done.
And the State Department did
Yes.
that?
And those are really the only things, well, I'll take you to the page 14, the $100,000 reduction there to the transfer to food service fund. That's what I was showing you up here, where we're reducing that amount to more accurately reflect what we're actually paying.
Mr. Richardson, would you state that again, what you said the $100,000 represented?
The 100,000, that is I showed it on this PowerPoint as well. That is the amount of money we transfer to the food service fund to pay for a portion of the fringe benefits for food service employees.
Fringe,
Mr. Camp?
okay. Ms. Hutchison.
On page 10, line 245 and 247, contracted services, this Board of Education and other objects, can you explain to us what is under each of those, what is, I guess, under each of those categories?
The biggest part on the contracted services, or actually maybe all of it, quite frankly, is the, I forget which is which now. One of them pays for our property and casualty insurance. I can't remember if it's other objects or the contracted services piece. But that's the big part. And the other one, I think, would be probably where you're paying fees for, excuse me, be where we're paying fees for various school board membership, that kind of thing.
Would this be for legal?
Legal, audit services are broken out, and we don't have those reflected there either, but audit service, but legal fees are in contracted services. Well, thank you, that's what it is. Legal fees, and then your insurance is paid out of 690 other objects.
Because I would suspect that the legal fees make up 98% of that, the contracted services.
Or more.
All right. So it's legal fees and property and casualty
Yes.
insurance, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
245.
So that's for the school district, Mr. Richardson? Property?
Yes, it is. That's part of it. We have our general tort, part of the property and casualty, it's actually two parts. Part of it is our general tort liability insurance for the entire district. That's the part you see reflected here under board, other objects. And then the other piece of it for the actual insurance on our buildings and contents is in our 254 function, which is maintenance of facilities.
That seems like an odd place to put the insurance.
That's
That's what the state says.
pretty much, yes, ma'am. I mean, that's the way it's
Okay.
been for, well, as long as I've been here, that's the way we've been doing it. But it's pretty much set. When you look in the accounting handbook, they tell you what the appropriate expenditures are for those kind
So
of
the
things.
state, that's not us doing that. That's the state telling us that's where we put these charges.
Well, it would, but I mean, that would be more appropriate, I think, because it covers the entire district, so.
Okay.
Mr. Gant,
I'm not an accountant.
I want to follow up with one of her questions.
Okay.
And maybe I heard it wrong. So it's like Ms. Hutchinson said, under the contracted services, under Board of Education, that would have not all our legal fees in it. It would just have anything that, or is that any kind of legal fee that has to do with the district? Would that's under that amount?
Any legal fees that are paid for from general fund dollars will be reflected there.
Okay, no.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Richardson, I appreciate the detail you've brought this, a general overview, and then Ms. Hutchinson had asked earlier for those highlighted areas, which you did, which I thought was really helped us. I think I see good news in this budget, and I hope it continues. You painted that for us last time we talked about it, but I'm very excited about, for the first time in I don't know how many years, be able to talk about all our employees receiving a pay increase, and that's significant. I think the other thing that's very exciting, and I've heard it for a long, long time, are the fee parts that parents pay, and I've never had a real good answer for that either, and I've been asked about it a lot, and I think all of us have. But I think there's some really, hopefully things will stay pretty much like it is. It's a budget that we've been hoping to have sometime. We talked about this last year's budget. We had no chance in the foreseeable future to hopefully give our employees a raise. How many years has that been that we've given a general cost of living? It's probably been,
I believe the last mandated cost of living was in 2013, but at the same time and I believe it was 2% as well, but at the same time, the General Assembly passed along increases in insurance that really probably more than wiped out the increase in salary for most employees.
right.
Now, as part of the Senate Finance, just since you brought that up, Senate Finance has changed some things where they've offered, and I want to make sure people understand that they're changing the raise or the cost of living adjustment for state employees to 4%, but that does not affect district employees. State mandates 2% increase for teachers and the mandated step increase for teachers, which on average is about 2%.
Right. And I guess I don't want to get lost on this word, but all. I think we have a great team effort. We have support employees and we have the professional teaching employees, and I think it's wonderful to be in the situation to be able to do that this year. So hopefully it's going to stay as it is. We'll be able to do that, and the other pieces of it are just probably the better news we've had in a long time as far as a budget.
I'll have to agree with that one.
Any other questions or comments about this discussion? Ms. Hammond? And then
I just was gonna ask on that $500 bonus, and I understand that's a one-time bonus. Will that, I guess it has to be taxed too, right? It's not, I didn't know if bonus money was kind of different. Or it goes into the salary and then you get your, FICA gets theirs and the state gets theirs.
Well, the only thing it's subject to from our perspective is the FICA. So that's why you see fringe benefits going along with this, but it's not subject to retirement and, or
Okay.
anything else. It's only the FICA piece. So we have to pay 7.65%
Okay.
on that. Now, the employee, however, will be having to pay their due share to the government.
Yeah, they're gonna get it, yeah.
Ms. Baumgartner?
I know a lot of things get shifted from one to the other, but on 246, on page 10, we had just gone through and selected an auditing firm. Is this not where the auditors that do our yearly auditing would be under?
It would be, and we've omitted that accidentally, so it will be back in there.
Okay, thank you.
Thought they were gonna do it free. No, we gotta pay.
Any other questions or comments this time? We'll look forward to the next installment and good news in the meantime, we hope and pray.
And hopefully the red number you see will not be as great as what you're seeing this time.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. That brings us to our item number 16, which is our adjournment, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Ms. Baumgartner,
Mr. Gant, I move that we adjourn.
have a second? Those lovely seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. We thank you all for being here and your input tonight.